Off the Shelf Books on Tour welcomes you to a book that I just finished reading about Salem, Mass. I'm your host, Veronica Andrews, and my guest is author, historian, researcher, Brunonia Barry. What a veritable bucket of information you had to gather to write this book.
It was fun, but it was a lot.
And it took you 5 years?
It did. The book took 5 years, and as the more and more I got into the research, the more I wanted to stay in the research.
But
so
isn't
the
that
writing
always
of it,
the way?
I think it is.
You find a nugget, and that takes you this
Yep.
way, and you forget
Exactly.
the nugget.
You follow the thread, and then you just, you just pick
The
up.
fifth petal pertaining to a rose.
To a rose.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But also in there somewhere, at a point when they're discussing the rosary, that the young lady had the impression of in her hand.
The scar, yes, yes.
She was praying, and they referred to the beads as a petal. Did I read that correctly?
Well, the petal, yes. And the petal is supposed to symbolize the 5 wounds of Christ as a 5-petaled rose. And in this, it goes way back. So the rosary, so there were rosaries made with, instead of a cross, with a rose.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Some very old ones. Mm-hmm. And I had to hunt a lot to actually
I would admit. Do you
find
think
one.
it was the whole rosary? Or I carry one in my pocketbook that is a
Just a
circle.
well, it was a circle with a rose where the cross normally would be.
So that,
yes.
you know, if you're in a doctor's office or you're pensive, you could have like a worry stone.
Yes,
almost.
exactly. Exactly.
Oh, good.
Yes.
I'm ahead of myself already.
And that's kind of what she did with it. She, would rub it and
Yep.
hold it, and obviously the night she held it too tightly, she got the scar.
I
The night of the murders.
I would imagine. What was your impetus for writing it?
Well, I've written about Salem. This is my 3rd book about Salem. And one of the things was I was fascinated by by Proctor's Ledge, for example, which, we all knew, all the locals really knew that was the real site of the hangings and improper burial, et cetera, et cetera.
Of the Salem
Of the
witches,
Salem
for those
accused.
who aren't local.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm. And, but it was kind of the worst kept secret around until the dedication of the park, the memorial last year. This was coincidental because I was exploring it at the same time the whole committee was working on this, but I didn't know about them and they didn't know about me until just about when the book went into the initial printing, the advanced reader's copy, and I happened to take copies to a couple historian friends I knew, and they pointed me in the right direction. July 19th in the book is a very important date of Rebecca Nurse's hanging, for example.
No, isn't she buried here in
Yes,
Danvers?
in Danvers. She's
Yes,
from
that's
Danvers.
what I thought.
And the Nurse Homestead is just a wonderful place for anyone who's interested in touring the real Salem witch trial
But
history.
isn't this, didn't I see on the calendar, National Witch Day was this week?
I heard that. Yes.
And, oh goodness, what was the other one? It's escaping me now. The timing of you being here just before Halloween.
Isn't that something? That's very good timing.
I mean, if we tried for this date, we wouldn't get it.
It's really true.
But as things have evolved, very serendipity.
It is, and much of the book takes place on Halloween, the first murder and the, yes. So I won't go into that too much, but.
No, I wouldn't want you to. But I don't know how you kept all the characters separate and where you ever found them and invented them, the intertwining. And it totally makes sense.
Oh,
do
good.
you sit down and write today, or do you driving along and remember that this guy is hanging over here doing something that you want him to do over here?
Well, some of the characters are recurring characters from The Lace Reader, which was my
Okay.
first book. So those characters I knew pretty well, so I didn't have to worry
So you
too
read
much
as
about
well
them.
as well.
Yes, and it's not necessary to read one before the other, but they do repeat, which is years later.
Must
kind
be
of thing.
like meeting old friends.
Yeah, it was for me. So I didn't have to take too much time with them. But the new characters and the goddesses, which I won't explain too much further either, but is those were new characters for me. So I had to really think about who these girls would have been and what role they played in town. And what, the theme of the book really was, could a witch hunt happen again in Salem? But also, when we make people other, what do we do to them? And that harkens back to the witch trials, obviously. But obviously it can happen now, too.
Well, without being politically incorrect, we're almost in a witch hunt right now.
It seems that way, and the word
Only
is certainly
the tables,
used.
tables have turned, and most of the goddesses are going after the guys.
Yeah.
Hello.
Well, it's two views on that. Yep.
Right, but look at
but-
how many books have been written about Salem, about the witches.
Well, that's true.
Cotton Mather.
Yeah.
All of the Samuel Sewell. All of those names, they keep on popping
They
up
do.
in so many.
And for good reason, I think, because
how
it is
did
a
they-
cautionary tale.
How did they get around? I mean, you and I had to leave our home probably 9 o'clock this morning to
Yes.
be here on time. They transferred this country in this community in Salem and
It's
Woburn
amazing.
and Danvers and Maine, like they had a jet plane.
It's really true.
Yes.
It's really true. When someone told me when the Salem fire happened, just 100 years ago, it was still a coach ride from Salem to Marblehead and over here, and a lot of people who didn't have homes in Salem anymore went one way or the other to other homes they had or just to other communities. But if you think a coach ride away, that's amazing.
And when they moved
sometimes a
from
day.
one community, they didn't have a moving van.
No.
They even when they traversed the ocean,
Exactly.
they took all their
They
furniture.
took everything in the coach with the
I mean, we
horses.
can't even get it in the back seat of the car.
I know, it's really true.
I love the part the young lady is a healer.
Yes.
So she's a bit of a goddess because goddesses are very real today to a lot of people.
It's really true. And she's very interested in sound healing. And I've had some experience with that with my own health. I have asthma. And I had a massage therapist who used singing bowls, the big quartz singing bowls, and that helped me a lot because I used to have to take steroids every time I had a bad attack. And she treated me one day, and I would use my peak flow meter, and the air I could take in was much higher. I haven't used steroids since.
Excellent.
Which is amazing. So, but I do have a very large singing bowl, and it's in front of my window at home, and I stir it like this, only on the outside, and I think my neighbors think it's a cauldron, so it's kind of interesting.
Well, good luck to them, but that is very real.
It is.
And I'm glad it worked for you, but your in-depth knowledge of the bowls, of the healing quality, and of the possibility they can help others, it comes through.
Oh, that's good.
In the book. It's not, you knew it was real. You knew it was a real thing today, like acupuncture and
Yes.
massage therapy. So it's not something you just heard about.
No, not at all. And the different scales and tones and all of this. I also studied the opposite effect, sound as a weapon. So this is something I got lost. I didn't use
There
that
you
in the
go,
book,
you
but
went
I got
from
lost
here
in
to
the
there.
research on that one. But it's fascinating. And then the thing with the, sound in some of the embassies, and I think it was Cuba and one other
Yes.
place, have happened. And I thought, wow, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Those people are still suffering. They
Yes.
still haven't kneeled down.
Exactly.
And with the diabolical weaponry of today,
Yes.
as we're going back to nature with our eating habits and our living habits,
Right.
the weaponry is going back too, because the only thing on that end is blow them all up.
Right, exactly. Yes.
So how can we hurt them and, handicap them and get over them without annihilating our world?
Well,
along?
exactly. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
So maybe witchcraft will come back, and I've been instructed to refer to it as craft.
Craft. Yes.
And there are rules. I'm lucky enough to have a daughter who studied under the Witch of Massachusetts, which you didn't mention in the book.
Under Laurie? Mm-hmm. Well, interestingly, when I wrote my first book, The Lace Reader, Laurie called me down and said, I'm going to have a class on lace reading. And she said, would you like to come? And I said, I certainly would. So I know her. And I have a few consultants, Terry Calbrin's one as well, that I take my books to and make sure that it fits their community and I'm
That's very
representing
important.
them well. And
But there are also several different interpretations
well, that's very
of
true.
the craft.
Right.
And that's why the daughter said, Mommy, you say this, you don't say
Yes,
that.
exactly.
You do
Exactly.
this, you don't do that.
I did take Witchcraft 101 as a research tool.
That came through.
Did it? Okay, good.
I've had very few questions for her. And I'm only on the outskirts of her life, but she did stone soup along Route 1 once, and I couldn't believe the people came from all over the country
Oh, that's
to
great.
be part of this weekend stone soup.
That's amazing.
So I think the world doesn't realize how many people, unfortunately, in the news, you see the bad side.
It's
What
really
else is
true.
known?
And I think this is a place that, ironically, witches don't have to hide out here. They're, sort of celebrated here. When we published The Lace Reader, my first editor was a Druid high priestess from New Jersey who did hide out. She said there were, people were very displeased in the town to have witches in town. So they love coming up here because it's,
so they can be comfortable.
They can, yeah. So it's interesting that the irony is they didn't really exist here as such at the time of the witch hunts.
But
now they exist in great numbers and
well,
safely.
maybe they did, and the seed was planted.
Well, in a certain sense, in terms of like healers and herbal healers and things like that, they certainly did.
You almost had to.
Yeah, I think you
You
did.
didn't have Mass General back then.
Right, right, exactly.
But I do
Yeah.
find that as a population, we're going back.
We are.
Herbs, honey,
Music therapy
Yeah.
used for surgeries.
yeah,
And,
all
yeah.
these different things that, and when you think about it, how did we get to be who we are if those people had not found ways to apply mud to
Yes.
open wounds?
It's very
and the
true.
Indians used to pour honey into
I'd
an
heard that,
open wound.
yes.
Yep. It's very, very medicinal.
I've heard if you're stuck someplace, that's what you should do. So, but I think maybe it might be the first thing you should do.
Crush up a lilac leaf if you get stung by a bee.
Oh,
You take the stinger out, and then you take a crushed lilac leaf.
oh, I didn't know that one.
Well, I
Thank
knew
you.
that from being a wife of a beekeeper, not
Oh.
being a wife of a witch or
Oh.
a druid.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Will there be another book? Do you already have another one in the making?
There will. I just turned in a manuscript that's very different. It's actually, I was challenged by my editor and my agent to, they found this book kind of scary. And I said, that's not frightening at all. And they said, well, we didn't want to read it at night. And I said, oh, come on. I said, if I wanted to scare you, I could scare you. And they said, do it. So I've just written a story about mothers and 13-year-old daughters that I consider a horror story. But it's kind of funny.
Do you have a 13-year-old daughter?
I don't, but I've had a lot of nieces who came to us at that age, and friends of theirs. And I used to write for the Beacon Street Girls series, so I had to study that age group. I think I got kind of stuck at that age myself.
Well, I think it was a good time.
Yeah.
And I have 4 daughters.
Ah, there you
and
go.
I enjoyed them. And I'm weird. I'm looked at PTO meetings when the first day of school, and everybody's so glad that they've gone to school and they're going for coffee or the local bar.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there crying like a
where
fool.
are they? Yeah.
I enjoy my children.
I love them at that age,
Yeah.
particularly. That changeover is just wonderful.
And I pick up the books they're reading
Yeah, me too.
so that I can have a foundation of discussion on what they think is
That's
important.
exactly right, I think.
Yeah, and it works. Otherwise, I wouldn't have read the number of books that I did.
Oh, that's interesting.
When do you expect the next book to come out? Is it going to have a name? I mean, that's another process itself.
You know, the name is funny because I go through 5 or 6 names, so I don't think the name that I have now, which is Night Blind Island, will stick. But I think it'll come out in 2020. So it takes a while.
Now, do you pick out your cover?
I have yes and no. I have they pick it out and then I say yes or no. And we consult on pretty much everything, but it's always a little push and pull.
Yeah, but that's why you went there, and without
Yes.
them, you wouldn't be.
Exactly.
And without you, they wouldn't be.
It's a great group
Mutual
that I've been working with.
benefit.
Yeah, from my agent to editors and everything. So and to promotion and it's just been a great
What do
crew.
you think about promotion? Do you like this business of talking to absolute
This new,
strangers?
I actually like this. What I'm not as fond of is all the social media that you have to do, because I'm not as good at it, and I'm not out there meeting people, and I'm not writing. So, any moment away from writing, I think I should be writing. So, I mean, you do it because that's what you do now, and that is how you develop readers who follow you and all of this. But it's not intuitive for me.
No,
I have
but
to work at it.
it's the balance that you have to keep.
It is, and more writers have to do it themselves. So, and I mean, it used to be you do absolutely everything. Now they say pick what you're best at and do that well. So we'll see. I'm trying to get there still.
How about when you pass in a manuscript and they edit it? You pass in 500 pages and they cut it down to 3. Is that painful?
That's painful. And usually, of course, it's what they say, kill your darlings, right? It's what you like the best, and you have to get rid of it.
Oh, I'm going to have to remember that.
It's really amazing. And but everything that I've cut has gone into a drawer, and I don't look at it, but I think someday I'll use this someplace else.
Yeah.
I probably never
In
will,
the
but it
next
makes me feel
venture,
better about it.
We'll republish.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Editors, do you fight with them when they say this isn't important and you say, but it is?
Usually, if I really say this is important, this is what the whole book is about, or something, they go, okay, go ahead. But generally, especially this last time, it was a real collaboration, really, because, for example, we moved chapters around, and that's something that she was great at, and I have a little more trouble with. I never know where the beginning of a book is. I know where the end
You
is.
don't do the outline like English class 101?
I do, but I still don't know exactly where it should begin and what should be flashback. So I might do it in a more linear way, and then they say, no, put this chapter there. So
Interesting.
And I think they have a better idea of what grabs somebody up front than I do.
Well, they do that as well as you do the writing.
Yeah, I think.
So, yeah, you have to mutually benefit one
think that's
another.
true.
Now, you have questions and answers in the back for book clubs. Do you like book clubs?
I love book clubs.
See, I just don't get into that.
Don't you? I'm in one, but we've only been reading nonfiction lately, which is good when I'm writing fiction, because otherwise I can get off in some genre and get stuck there too. But with my first book, book clubs passed the word all over the country.
Yeah,
and I
that's true.
tested the book with book clubs through a bookstore that's in Marblehead, the Spirit of 76. I went in with a book, loose pages in a box, and said, could you get one of your book clubs to read this? And they did. So that was helpful. So, and they, I made the mistake of serving them tea because it was about a tea room. Always serve wine, I think. That seems to be the key to getting frank answers to your
I
questions.
prefer coffee.
Or coffee.
but that's not a bad idea. And what would you serve for this one?
Well, that's a really good question.
Did you have a big launch party?
We did. We had a launch party at the Athenaeum for this one, which was wonderful. And I've been involved in the writers program at the Salem Athenaeum for quite a while.
Now, do you stand in awe of other readers who are long and established?
Yes, definitely.
Do you have stage fright, afraid to talk to them, stand mouth wide open?
Well, when I talk with them,
Yeah, meeting them at these...
meeting them, well, I have a little trouble with crowds because I don't know why I get a little bit standoffish in crowds. But when I meet one-on-one like this, or at a conference that we might be all on the same panel at, it's great. But at a cocktail party or something, I just tend to shy away.
I'd still rather have coffee.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how I feel there. Yeah, exactly.
Now, you credit your hubby with reading, writing, and putting up with
Oh my gosh, every page aloud. I read every page aloud to a poor man.
Yeah, but I read them aloud to my husband
you?
and my son.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, especially if it's a historical, well done, that they'll never read.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's a good idea.
So I just sit there reading it, and they'd like to ignore me, and they'd like to not. But if it's well done, eventually they'll both sit down and listen.
That's great.
And we all have the same knowledge, and a lot of times they will give me good questions to ask.
Oh, that's really good, actually. Wonderful. Well, my poor husband, I bring into the end of every day, whether I'm writing a first draft or something finished, and he is good enough to know, well, yesterday you said it this way or something, which is really good.
Yeah,
That's a lot of
paying
concentration.
attention, yeah.
I don't think I could quite do that if it were reversed.
He's not a writer?
He's a songwriter.
Oh, do you
So
listen to his songs?
I do, and he's amazing with lyrics. And I don't write anything short. I think it's much harder to write something short,
Quick.
a letter, or and he does with writing songs. He's very succinct and on the mark.
Country and Western?
All
show
sorts of
tunes?
things. He started with jazz and blues, and now he's doing a play with Americana music. So I don't know. I don't know where it's going, but he's very good.
Good. Well, he should write one about the Fifth Petal and give you an intro.
That would be really good.
Well, if he does, let us know. And
Okay.
We'll put it on the front and the
perfect.
back, and we'll
Perfect.
have his copyright permission.
That would be great.
We're going to pause for a minute while you get ready to read something for us
Okay.
so that everybody who's listening knows how well you do.
Oh, all right.
Be back in a minute.
I'm going to read something about Halloween night and John Rafferty, who is the fictional chief of police in Salem, who patrols the streets on Halloween when we have about hundreds of thousands more people than we do have in Salem normally. As always, the pedestrian-only walkway was full of revelers, pirates, sexy witches, monsters, and zombies. Lots of zombies. The undead outnumbered the pirates and witches about 10 to 1. From the middle of the crowd, he could hear the amplified voices of the evangelists, preaching fire and brimstone to the revelers, damning their souls to hell unless they repented and stopped partying. They had added drums this year and cymbals that clanged each time a preacher mentioned hell. The partiers were laughing and applauding. It didn't seem like there'd be any confrontations between the groups tonight. At a gathering on the corner, Rafferty saw a family wearing homemade costumes that featured bloody stumps where their limbs should have been. They were pulling a little red wagon full of body parts. He watched another man who stood on the sidelines dressed as an oven, complete with burners that turned off and on. A very convincing set of duct-taped Siamese twin dogs ran in front of his cruiser, nipping at each other's faces, frustrated by their unnatural confinement. The usuals were present and accounted for, too. Frankensteins and the mummies, posing for photos at their regular posts by the Peabody Essex Museum. Out-of-touch vampires, still sporting sparkling glitter in homage to Twilight. There'll be zombies next year, Rafferty thought. Vampires have been passé in Salem for quite a while now. He felt sorry for some of the store owners, the ones who paid rent for shops no one could get to through these crowds. It happened every year. Dozens of fortune tellers set up their booths on Essex Street, right in front of the year-round shops that were vying for the same customers. The competition between the resident and visiting psychics had been a big problem a few years back. As a result, Salem now licensed its psychics before allowing them to set up their temporary booths in October. How the heck do you license a psychic? Rafferty had asked when he'd heard about the plan. I mean, do you have them do a reading and then just wait a few months and see if any of their predictions come true? We'll follow San Francisco's lead, the town clerk had told him. We're going to use their psychic licensing methods. Of course we are, Rafferty had laughed, relieved he didn't have to figure out how to do something so ridiculous. It turned out that all they had to do was check criminal backgrounds before granting licenses. Anyone without a pass could now read the future.
Well done.
Thank you.
And that, I think, is what the population expects.
Yes.
But what I learned from visiting this community quite often is, wasn't it last week, they have the evening for the residents,
Yes,
and they do the parade,
they do.
which involves all their school children. They're encouraged to come in
It's
costume.
wonderful.
I've never seen so many parents having fun with their kids.
Isn't that great? I have 4-year-old grandnieces now, and they just adore that.
It's one, and
Yeah.
then do they not have the residents have free admission to the witch houses
They do.
and the museums
Yep,
and the
BBD
shops
Essex and the shops
that
and
get crowded out
yes.
on Halloween.
And we have free admission to the trolleys pretty much all year now in Salem, which is great. And I am always over on Chestnut Street on Halloween night because the Witches March to Gallows Hill goes up Chestnut. And all the trick-or-treaters from other towns come down that street.
So
And
you
it's really
stand
fun.
there, or it's your house?
We sit, it's a friend's house, and we sit on their stoop, and everybody dresses up and is, everyone's in costume.
Do you hold up pallets that give them a 9, a 10, or a 5?
We don't, but we make them tell us what they are and talk to us.
Excellent.
So it's really great.
We have to wrap this fun fest up, and you wouldn't think. I don't think we were supposed to have as much fun about Salem
was
and
fun.
witches and the Fifth Petal. I will anxiously look forward to your next book. Would you please bring it to us?
I would love to, Veronica. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks
Thank
for
you so
coming in.
much.
Again, the book is The Fifth Petal. Briona?
Just call me Brew.
Oh,
Brunonia.
Brew, thank you so much. Divine intervention, Barry. It's well done, and it's well worth the read. Have a good one. Bye.